Why did you end up with the life you have? How did that happen? I want to have a little discussion today and start to break that down, because we're being driven by something. And often we feel we have free will, and maybe you do, but I want to look at that from a different angle, and so we can start to unpack it. And who are you, or what are you? Basically, we're made up of three main traits. So there's biogenic traits, sociogenic traits, and idiogenic traits. Biogenic traits are the basic primal responses that we all have. There's coding that all humans have, and it is biogenically coded. And there's things like the desire for high caloric foods, the wanting to stay bond into a tribe, reproduction. All that stuff is our coding and is why we are the species we are. That's the biogenic coding. Now, there's sociogenic. Sociogenic, if you think about it, is the society you grow up in. So, what part of the world did you grow up in? What was their belief system? What religion? What school did you go to? What family? What education did you have? All of that is contributing to your sociogenic traits. And then, in addition to that, there's idiogenic traits. Your individual reaction to certain circumstances. So I could have a twin brother and we could have an experience, but I might get a different interpretation of it. I might get a different reaction. It might be something like, you wanted chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast and your family served blueberry pancakes. And one brother interpreted it as, oh, if they really loved me, they would have given me chocolate chips. The other brother maybe interpreted it as, oh, I understand they ran out of chocolate chips. So now I have this idea that the world is reacting to me a certain way. And so there are three major stages of brain development. So it's early childhood, and that's, they say that we're in a theta state majority of our childhood up until we're 7 years old, which is the subconscious state. So that's where a lot of this coding of who I am starts to generate. So I'm reacting to the world. I'm trying to figure out kind of who I am in the world, or that I'm independent, that I am someone in the world. Then there's sort of teenagers, middle school, that sort of age, where I'm kind of learning how do I fit in with my tribe. And then the young adulthood, 18, 21, where it's who I am in the world. And so those stages of life are affecting me. We also inherit trauma. There's studies that show this now, that my coding my DNA comes coded with what my lineage. So they did a lot of these studies with offspring from Holocaust survivors, and they found that there's actually a coding in the DNA for higher stress. So the experience that you are inherited with also contributes to who you are. So the identity. So if I ask you who you are, there's the physical component, right? You can look at me and go, oh, I recognize Paul. He looks like this. There's also my memories. I remember doing things with you. I remember where I grew up. So there's those memories. But then there's another part of it. There is my personality, my identity, the way I react to certain stimuli in the world. So as I go through my day, I come across events and I react to those events. Now those events might not have an inherent meaning, but they go through my filters of my identity and I put an interpretation on them. So those events go through my filters and I react to them. So what I am essentially is these filters, which are my beliefs. My filters come from my beliefs, which are built up from my idiogenic and sociogenic traits. So idiogenic, what I think about myself. If I think I'm terrible or useless, or I think I'm great or fantastic, or I'm trying to posture, whatever that is, that's my filter. Now, everything that I interact with is going through that filter. And what we do as humans is we try and validate our existing beliefs. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do go through our day looking for signs that validate what we already believe. So if I believe I might have racism is a good one. So that's a biogenic trait. If you show a toddler a picture of someone who looks different, their amygdala automatically lights up. It's an automatic response. This is a defense response. Oh, be careful. I'm suggesting you might need to prepare because that person could be dangerous because they're different. You're not part of their tribe. That's it. Then our reason part of the brain can override that. But say it doesn't. Say no one teaches me that, oh no, you're safe. They're another human. If I don't have that, now I believe maybe my caretaker's reinforcing that fear. They might have the existing fear. So now I have the belief that people who look different than me, who have a different pigmentation, are a threat to me. Now I'm looking to validate that. So I go through my life looking, oh, see, this happened. It's because of the people who have this skin tone, this pigmentation. That's why I'm suffering. And so I'm validating it. So that's an extreme example, and it's a very big example. We do it constantly with what we think about ourselves. So I'm going through life validating what I feel about myself. So if someone says to me, hey, Paul, I love your sweater. If I just take that, I have no issue with how I look, I might take that, oh, great, thank you, you like my sweater. If I feel uncomfortable about myself, I might think that they're being sarcastic. Oh, do you think I look bad in my sweater? So these are the filters that are dictating our lives. And so as they go through the filter, it triggers us. So it hits a nerve. Usually there's some idiogenic trait or some trauma that nerve is spiking and we react to it. So we are our physical, we are our memories, but we're also our reactions. And this all happens in our thoughts. Thoughts don't actually exist in a tangible way. We know we have them. You can think thoughts right now, but you couldn't show me a thought because it has no matter. So we live in a physical world in a dimension of matter. It has to have an atomic nature. Outside of that, it doesn't have matter. So there's things that we know that don't have matter that exist. Vacuum. We know that we can create vacuum, which is the absence of anything. We know it exists. The same with thoughts. Thoughts exist in a different dimension, a dimension that isn't matter, isn't time, space. So they do exist, but I can't show you. So I can't show you my identity. If you opened up my brain, it would look remarkably like everyone else's brain. My identity is not existing. I'm actually performing my identity. I wake up each day and start to go about my day as this character that I developed through my childhood, through my life. And that's my filters to the world. If anyone's seen Westworld, that's actually us. We are the robots that have this coding and we have this range that we can live in, this glass ceiling, and we can't break out of that glass ceiling. Our identity wants to keep us in this realm that it knows. Because if you think about it, I developed my identity as a safe haven. It might be maybe in middle school, I went through something traumatic. Maybe I felt I was trying to figure out how I fit in with the tribe. And maybe I was teased. And so I'm going to react to that, to being teased. And I'm going to decide whatever that was I was being teased, I'm not going to do that. Or I'm going to come up with a different reaction to it. I maybe found out that if I am really silly and funny and do stupid things, that I get a reaction. And people laugh at me. And so then I feel bonded with the tribe. So now I'm the class clown. And then I go through life dealing with that. That's always a part of me. Unless I separate from it, which we'll talk about. Actually, tomorrow we're going to jump into this about separating from it. I'm going really fast because usually this is a 3-hour talk and I'm putting it into just under 30 minutes. So if you have questions, there's a little button on Instagram that has a card with a question mark in it. Throw your question in there. When I get to them, I can answer them. Or if you have them later, you can also throw them into Instagram and I'll just put them under the post that I put today, and I will answer them as we go. On Facebook, you can just write them in the comments, and I'll try and get to them if they don't scroll up. Okay, so what I'm describing are our loops. So who I am is actually a loop that I'm running, my identity, my personality. I'm going to end up with the life that my identity is comfortable having, and that supports the story of my society, my sociogenic traits. So in our modern Western society, there's certain things that we do. We have a job, we get married, we have children, we get a house. Those are the stories that we're trying to fulfill. And if we don't, we come up against a fundamental biogenic trait. It's a fundamental fear of all humans, which is being kicked out the tribe. I need to fit in with my tribe, or I might get kicked out. That's a fundamental fear. That's why the punishment we have in our modern civilization works, which is imprisonment. What imprisonment is, I'm going to separate you from your tribe, I'm going to isolate you, and then it will condition you, change your behavior. That's such a great fear, it's going to force us to fit these rules. So I will fit in with the rules of society. If I grew up in, I think it's the Wakabi tribe in Africa, their relationship's very, very different. They have a season where they actually go to this festival with the hope, the wife's goal is to get her husband to have sex with another female. It's for biodiversity, but that's their culture. They are disappointed if their husband doesn't get selected. They paint his face, they dress him up, he goes and performs, he does this dance, and hoping to get selected. That's very different from our culture. Our culture is very different, based on our belief systems. So I have the life I have because I'm fitting into this story. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. What we're having a discussion about is a discussion that, are you choosing your life, or is it being dictated by your identity and by your sociogenic traits? The power is in choosing it. So whatever life I have, I'm going to choose it. Once I choose it, I then have control over it. I then own it. Once I own it, I can do something about it. If it's something being done to me, I have this life I have because of something else, I don't have the ability to change it. So first of all, we all got to take ownership for our lives. Whatever it is, even if you don't think you are responsible for it. I have a leg length difference. I have a 60-minute leg length difference. It's affected my sports. I had to retire from track and field because I kept getting injured. If it's someone else's fault, I can't do anything about it. But I take ownership. That's my leg length difference. And I was able to do a lot of work to compensate, to extend my career. I also was able to try different sports that I wouldn't have gone into if I'd gone to a career of track and field. So I took ownership over that. So we want to take ownership of our lives, but we also want to have the freedom to choose it without right or wrong, without meaning. Once we understand where the meaning is coming from, we can then disarm it. So I want to talk a little bit about our triggers. So if something upsets me, that's what I'm referring to as a trigger. I'm going through my life, I'm going through my day, and something happens, and I react to it. It has to go through a filter. There has to be something there to cause a reaction, right? If there's nothing there, I can't react. Why would I react? We're going to talk about, I think it's in 2 days, about human communication. Because it's very interesting how we communicate. We use sonic tones. We add meaning to those sonic tones. And we call it language. I'm speaking the English language now. That's how you're understanding me. I'm also communicating through gestures and things like that. But it's a very poor communication form because I'm then interpreting those sonic tones through my own filters. And I'm making the meaning of them. So we go out throughout our days, throughout our lives, and we're getting triggered all the time. There's an upset. There might be people in particular that are triggering us.